Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over Moonflower, which is a Post Malone type beat song. You may notice that this intro is a little bit different. I'm using this mic instead of that mic, so hopefully this intro and outro sounds better. We'll go ahead and get into it. I'm just going to try to explain to the best of my ability how I made my beat Moonflower, and hopefully I'm entertaining, so let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, here we are in the Moonflower project. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. The track opens with a little bit of piano and like a plucked muted guitar. So we'll go ahead and listen to that. So it's pretty simple. I'll show you guys what I'm using for the piano here. I'm using hybrid keys. I've used this in a number of my other projects as well. They just have some interesting stuff. I just like the way these sounded for this song. You might notice that the piano is very, very simple. Part of the reason for that is once I put everything together, it just sounded better to have just really simple whole note chords. So I didn't really try to make it sound like someone playing piano as much as just like whole note stabs. And we'll get into this guitar. So this guitar has a fade in, but I'll play it at full volume. Alright, so this guitar, I actually have some tracks hidden, and one of the tracks hidden is the Native Instruments instrument for this guitar. So they have Session Guitarist Electric Sunburst. And I basically used different presets with this for different patterns that are played throughout the song. And then I put those through other forms of processing. So the tone of itself is a little more unique, but there are different patterns that they have provided that do sound very real. They sound really, really good. The thing is, there's a lot of different samples you can use, as well as different MIDI instruments that are available. I have a friend who works in FL Studio, and some of their MIDI guitar instruments that are basically like guitar samplers are super realistic sounding, and it's super easy to write stuff that sounds really realistic. There's a lot you can do. I actually started this track with a MIDI instrument that's just from Logic. It was one of these. I just went to the Logic library and went to their hard rock, and it's basically a sampler that plays like a MIDI instrument, and they have settings for it. I originally started the song with this guitar, but I changed it as the song changed. And eventually the kind of pattern that I wanted wasn't what I had written. So this song started with different chords, it started with a different tempo, and it started with different lead lines and it really felt like a different song entirely. But that's what I ended up using, was the Electric Sunburst Session Guitarist from Native Instruments. And I used the same MIDI instrument for the other guitars in the track. It's just that I basically went in, played it out in the MIDI, and then bounced it to audio. And so all these files are audio files, but they were from a MIDI instrument. And then the next thing we have after this piano and guitar come in is some of these vocals down here. And I'll go ahead and get into it, let you guys hear what it sounds like. So this was a few different things. I initially came up with the main vocal lead here when I was right after I had changed the chords and some of the melody. I ended up wanting to add some vocals to kind of pad out the space of the song, and this lead line is the first part that I came up with. And then I added these harmony parts just to kind of thicken it up. And then I took the main line and I basically delayed it a bit, pitched it up, and added a little bit different of effects on it. I did do some editing on the vocals in terms of pitch correction as well as pitch shifting. So like this one is really obvious, as well as once you get into the vocals I have for the verse here, you can really tell that it's been edited. So there's actually one sample in there that I reversed, just because it kind of sounds right going into the main riff again. And I used a pitch shifted version, but I also I used what Logic calls vocal transformer, and you can actually adjust the pitch and the formant. So I have the pitch and formant. It's pitched up, but the formant shifted down, which gives it kind of a weird feeling. Yeah, so that's how I gave it that sound. I also have reverb on these, and I also use Nectar from Isotope as my main like EQ and initial like effects set on all these vocals. The cool thing about Nectar is they have this thing called Vocal Assistant. You click that, and you can choose to either unmask a track or mix a track. And so basically you choose to mix it. You play the audio, it hears it, it adds a bunch of different stuff. It'll add a de-esser, a compressor, it'll add different EQs, a noise gate, it'll add pitch correction. It does a bunch of different stuff. And then that kind of is the core whenever I do something vocally. I'll throw that on, and it just kind of gives the vocals the core of what needs to be done. And then I'll add different kinds of pitch correction if I want to have a specific sound, which you can't, it's not real obvious until I solo this, but there's like some heavy pitch correction here. The notes I sing are in key, but as I move between notes, you can kind of hear the pitch correction. And it's not super prominent. It's not as prominent as like what used to be on like T-Pain's music back in the day, like when I was in high school. Like everyone would like joke that T-Pain couldn't sing, but he could. He just used heavy pitch correction so that when he changed pitch, it created kind of a electronic digital effect on his voice. But that's basically kind of how I did the vocals. The harmonies are just specific notes out of the chords I picked, and I probably could have put more harmonies in. I probably could have done 3 total beneath the melody, but I did 2, and when I played it with everything, it fit, so we left it. We didn't change it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And then about halfway through, this clap and this hi-hat come in, so I'll go ahead and play you that. With this clap and hi-hat, I wasn't really sure how to lead in. The clap actually came into the song much later. I initially had a hi-hat and it just felt empty. So I eventually put a clap in and it felt right, feels good. So everything I'm using here percussion-wise with kick, snare, clap, hi-hat, it's all from the Blue kit, BLEW, and I think it's part of Pure Drip. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's part of Pure Drip, which is a battery 4-pack from Native Instruments. And I can actually I'll play halfway through this section going into the first verse. And just give you a chance to hear what that sounds like. You'll hear this rise leading into the verse. The bass comes in as well as the kick and snare, and then the altered vocal harmonies right here, the pitched up main line as well as the kind of echoing vocal lines. So let's go ahead and play that and let you hear it. So normally with vocals, anytime I do beats, I try to leave a lot of space because the goal of producing a beat is that I'm making something that another person can take and use and create something new out of. Whereas if I was writing like any other type of music, I'm trying to fill as much space as possible so that it feels full and it feels creative and it never feels like it's just sitting here because I couldn't come up with anything better to do. This is kind of an example of me adding a little bit extra. So the pitched up vocal line I feel like fits really well and kind of does sync to the background, but the echoes that I have kind of stand out. However, I left it in there because I feel like it fits the vibe so well of the song that it feels much more like the instruments rather than vocals. If it felt more like I was saying words, or if I was saying something or actually like singing words, I would probably take it out here because I want this to feel as usable as possible for people. The intro and verses have the same chord structure. That changes going into the pre-chorus and the chorus, and I'll get into that later. But when we get halfway through this first verse, there's a few things that happen. There's a second lead line that comes in behind the guitar. So we have our muted pluck right here, and this is what it sounds like through the whole first verse. But then we get this lead line coming into the second part of the verse. And that's just to bring a little bit of extra energy. Another thing that changes in the second part of this verse is these harmony parts come back in. So it goes from just having this main line with the echo to also having these harmony parts. So that's what changes, but most of the stuff stays the same. So the bass lines are the same, the kick and snare are the same, and like the hi-hat, piano, that stuff stays the same. But there's only a few things that get added, but it does make quite a different shift in the feeling of the track here. I'll go ahead and play halfway through the first half into the second half. So for this lead line in the guitar, I'm using the same Electric Sunburst Native Instruments instrument as the muted pluck. It does sound a little bit different because some of the settings have changed. Some of the stuff that I have on the guitar itself have changed. For these guitars, just like the vocals, I use an isotope plugin called Neutron 3. It's very similar to Nectar. It has what's called a mix assistant, very similar to the vocal assistant in Nectar. But basically, you hit that, you play the track, and it hears, you can basically tell it what you want it to sound like, and then it hears the track and adjusts things like the EQs, compressors, exciters, sculptor, things like that. It adjusts those things to get the sound that you want. This is a very helpful tool. It helps you get things sounding really good and crisp really quickly. So instead of having to manually EQ things, it kind of does it for you. But yeah, so I have 4 different guitar tracks. They're all using different instances of Neutron 3. They're also using different types of sidechain compressors as well as reverb for them all to have the sounds that they have. The main difference in the second verse, as I mentioned earlier, is just this lead line, and then the harmonies coming in gives kind of a like vibe shift leading into this pre-chorus. And it adds just enough energy to make it feel like the track's moving, but it doesn't really overpower the feeling of the verse. With that being said, we'll go ahead and go into this pre-chorus, and this is the first part where the chord progression changes to give us a different feeling, as well as some of the vocals change a little bit. And we're going to stop it right before we get into the drop. So what we have here is a few different things. We have some clap automation. So part of where the clap first came into this song was at this pre-chorus. It didn't build the way I wanted it to build, so I threw a clap in. I also automated the clap, so I cut the volume of the clap, I cut the volume of the rise, and I cut the volume of the guitar lead by like 3 decibels. So as it's building up and getting louder, the volume is slowly going down. You can see that this is going from nothing and slowly getting louder. I still keep it 3 decibels lower than the chorus for the sake of having this part of the song feel really loud but not get quite as loud, so that when the chorus comes in it still feels loud. This is kind of a trick that a lot of people talk about using. I don't always use it because my buildups are usually pretty different. So sometimes a buildup will literally just be a rise over silence, and when the bass comes in it fills everything in, and I don't really need to make it feel louder. But when you have a guitar and a clap and a rise and like vocals in the background and piano and like all these things happening, it is good to like slowly bring the volume down and then jump it back up to where it's at when you cut back in. It just helps things hit hard on that hit. Another thing that I have automated besides the volume is I have the mix of the reverb automated. So the clap has a reverb on it that's at 24%, and it sounds like this. And I automate that reverb to basically mix more into the reverb as opposed to the dry signal as the claps speed up. So that sounds like this. So basically, I'm just having it sound a little more distant and spread out as it speeds up, and I feel like that takes some of the intensity off the transient. It also helps everything else as it feels like it's building. Just to me, it feels more natural that way. So we'll go ahead and listen to it again, and I'll try to stop it before we get back into the drop. So the guitar lead right here is actually the same lead from the chorus, and I just have it playing, I guess to kind of create a callback when the chorus comes in. It's just slowly introducing that energy that we have in the chorus to kind of get you familiar as you're listening to expect that same kind of energy. It's kind of going from the verse and saying, hey, this is what to expect coming up next. In the guitar muted verse and the piano, the reason why you see these pieces cut up is because the chords that are in the pre-chorus are in the verse, but I chose specific chords that kind of leave you feeling hanging, like we're right before something's about to happen, and it makes it feel like it's building up. So it's not the same chord progression, but some of the chords are the same as in the verse. And then the rise I have right here. I also have what I call a rise down, and I'll just play it for you to hear, and then I'll kind of explain where I'm coming from with it. All right, so basically why I have these, I have the build-up, and with the build-up I have my initial rise. And one thing that I do here is I don't go straight from the rise into the drop. I have this little piece of the drums right here. So it builds up, and then this is what you hear. So there's a little bit of a fill right before we go in. It's just one bar of the song that's a fill, and I just feel like it stops the song for a second to kind of add flavor, I guess. Right before it goes into the drop. And the reason why I have this thing I call rise down is it's basically like the opposite of a rise. It feels like it's falling. And the rise goes up, you hear the drum fill, and as that drum fill's happening, you hear the rise falling down, and then it's accompanied with the bass drop of the rise down instrument, as well as the actual bass hitting from the chorus, as well as the kick hitting from the chorus as well. So it brings everything kind of to this drop point. And I'll go ahead and play the build up into the chorus and let you hear it for yourself. And I really like the way it turned out, but I guess you guys will just have to let me know if you liked it or not in the comments. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the chorus or hook of the song. The drum pattern is different, so I'll go ahead and play the drum pattern of the verse. And then I will go ahead and play the drum pattern of the chorus. So there's the hi-hat is faster. There's a lot more energy to it. The verse is a lot simpler. The verse in general of this song feels, I guess the way I would describe it is it feels very empty and isolated. It doesn't feel very full. But then that is contrasted to the fullness, in my opinion, of the chorus. The drums feel more full, as well as everything else feeling more full. So the bass is pretty much the same as the verse. It's just the chords, it's just the bass notes for the chorus. The chords are some of the same chords from the verse, kind of like with the build-up. I took some of the chords that were already there because I think I use like 6 different chords in this song, which is a lot of chords. Most songs normally have 3 or 4 chords, sometimes 5, but I have a handful of chords I use. Also, a lot of the chords are very similar, but they're just slight changes, and because of that, I picked specific chords that I wanted in a specific order for the chorus. And the chorus starts with a bit of, I think it starts on the 6th chord, or the minor of the relative major, and then it goes through a different transition of chords than the verse, whereas the verse, I believe, starts with like a major 7th chord or a major 6th chord. But yeah, the chorus starts and ends on different chords, and the progression between the chords is also different than from the verse as well. The guitars are a significant difference. Obviously, the most prominent aspect of the guitars is this lead line, and I'll go ahead and play it by itself. And then what you don't hear as prominent in this part of the song is the actual guitar chords for the chorus, and this is how that sounds. And I really like the way that sounds. So again, these guitars are both from this Electric Sunburst from Native Instruments. I really like the way that this plucked guitar chords sound in the chorus. It really, really, really reminds me of like Lil Peep or Aries, and some of the other like emo rap style stuff. And I just really like the way it sounds. At the end of the song, I actually play the chorus progression without the lead line and without some other elements. I kind of strip it back as the song's ending, and it's much more prominent, and I just really like the way it feels. I feel like it just sounds right, it sounds good, it fits the whole vibe, it brings everything together. The other thing I have in the chorus is the vocals. I bring back the main vocal line, so this vocal main is the same as the beginning of the song. But what is not the same is the harmony parts. I actually split the harmony parts up based on the chorus chord progression. It sounds like this. And once all those are put together, it sounds like this. One thing that one of my friends had mentioned to me in the past was something that came to mind in the middle of writing the song. Is he mentioned how there are a lot of songs that hold one melody line over different chord changes, and I thought that's pretty cool. What if I use the same melody as the main melody line as the beginning of the song in the chorus, but I just, everything underneath it changes to give the chorus feeling, and it fits really well. The melody line goes with everything in the chorus just as well as it does the progression from the verse. And I'm just going to play it one more time because I really like the way it sounds. I'll just play from here in the middle so we don't have to do the build up and everything. Nice, and that was logic breaking. All right, so we'll go ahead and go into the second verse, which we're basically halfway through the song. We're almost done. The second verse is very similar to the first verse. In fact, the vocal pattern stays the same. What doesn't stay the same is this lead line that I have in the verse. I have the second verse coming in with the lead line. I'll go ahead and try to play a little bit of the chorus going into the second verse for you. So the second verse basically comes in with that lead line, and I feel like it adds a little bit of energy that we need coming right out of the chorus. I don't have any kind of break or anything between the chorus and the second verse, so I feel like that lead line helps carry some of the energy. But then the lead line cuts out for the second half of this first part, and I feel like it works. I feel like it helps bring the energy down a little bit. So So as you can see, I just cut that lead line out for that last bit, and then it comes back in, and it comes in with the harmony, and it's basically the same as the second half of the first verse. Sometimes I would try to do different things. I would either try to pitch shift something or do something extra. It just felt very natural. It felt like the kind of song... I don't know, it felt like something like Post Malone or something where it feels like a natural progression and doesn't feel like there's a bunch of extra stuff going on. It feels like a very natural way that you would have a chorus come out of it with some of that energy, and then you would drop it, and then you'd pick the energy back up, and it would feel very familiar as to where we've been before, and maybe even kind of give us, kind of revisit that same experience we had before. I was worried that if I changed too much of the second verse, it wouldn't feel like we were, I don't know, it would feel too different. I wanted it to feel natural. So that's why I didn't do anything crazy with this. I didn't like pitch shift anything super low or do anything weird or really change anything. I wanted the song to feel like a song, to feel natural and like everything fit. And then after the second verse, we go back into another build-up. It follows the same structure as the previous build-up. And then we go into the final chorus or hook of the song as I produced it for this beat. And then after this chorus or hook, we hit the chorus or hook that I referenced earlier that really is kind of the outro of the song. It kind of, we've heard the song in its full form, and this is kind of a chance to either kind of dwell there or revisit that once again as the song is winding down. And I'll go ahead and I'll play halfway through the chorus and into that last bit of the hook. And I'll actually just play out through the end of the track, and you can hear as I bring things back. And really all I do is I take the lead line out, I adjust the drums, so it goes from the hi-hats and drum pattern of the chorus to the hi-hat and drum pattern of the verse. So it helps slow everything down a little bit. The chords stay the same as the chorus, and the guitar, the plucked guitar that I mentioned that I really liked, that stays throughout it. So it basically slows it down and you can hear that guitar more prominently, and it just helps the song feel like it's coming to a close and feel like it's coming to an end. So I'll go ahead and start halfway here into that outro. And that is Moonflower. Another fun fact that I just thought of going over this in the ending is there's a sound that, to me, as I'm listening to the track, because I always do a car test, I always listen to it on either headphones, I listen to it on like wireless speakers, just to hear how it sounds. There's a part of the song that always sounds like there's either a bird or whistling in the background. And the first time I really noticed it was in this first chorus, and I'm pretty sure it's just from the formant being shifted down on this pitched up part of the main melody line. And it's super faint, like I don't notice it when hearing it alone, but then when I hear it with other things, I can hear it much more prominently. And what I realized it is some frequency from that pitched up bit in the reverb of that track being echoed. So for whatever reason, that frequency is kind of highlighted in the reverb and it echoes. And for whatever reason, when everything's together, you can really hear that frequency. And you can pretty much hear it throughout the whole song. And it sounds either like a bird or someone imitating a bird or someone whistling. And it just sounds like a little extra piece of audio that someone put in there, but in reality, it's just the massive amount of effects that I put on everything turning into a new sound. So I just thought that was cool, and a little bit of like a little hidden thing that I found as I was going through it. So yeah, that is pretty much Moonflower. Well guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did enjoy it. Leave a like, leave a comment. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more planned for the future. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.